Hey guys, Alistair Cunningham here again. Listen, last week I talked to you about how I started my first business. That business was called Head Start Engineering, and it came by a lucky phone call from one of my new customers called Chris Day. Last week I also talked to you about how I learnt my biggest business lesson from that experience. If you want to watch last week's show, just click up here, you'll be able to watch it and you'll be able to catch up. So go ahead, do that right now. Now, let's talk about that lesson, because let me tell you something, that lesson, I've taken that in every single business I've ever done ever since then. This bus that I was going to work on, RR02BUS, bright orange Dennis Star, hadn't been for its MOT in at least 2 years. It failed its last MOT, and Chris said to me, Alistair, you seem to know what you're doing, you crack on and you have a go at doing that bus. So I done that bus, and I literally spent every hour I could that week getting that bus through its MOT. The way you do it is you have to do an inspection on the bus. So you have to look through the bus to make sure that everything's okay. Any problems or any defects that you find, you write down a list and you come up with a big long list of the problems on that bus. Now, getting a bus through an MOT is not the same as getting a car through an MOT. You see, if the bus fails its MOT, the operator, Chris, gets into financial difficulty, and he could face financial penalties for buses failing MOTs on a long-term basis. What that means is he loses operators' licenses. If he loses operators' licenses, then he will lose money because the buses can't operate. So there's a lot of pressure on my head and my shoulders to make sure that this bus goes through its MOT. Now the thing is, this is my first big job in my new business. And I want to make a good impression, so I've got to get this right. And as a result, I was working every single day and night to make sure that there was nothing I forgot or nothing I missed. Now, the way you do it is you go through, you create a list of a defect. I call it a defect list. That list on this was 3 A4 pages long. There was about 85 things that needed to be rectified on this bus to make it fit for MOT. That meant I had to drive around and find parts. I had to go to garages, other garages, and pick up spare parts, and I did actually end up driving around a lot, helping, trying to keep the cost down, buying second-hand parts, doing whatever I could to get this bus fit for purpose. I had to change the brakes, I had to do bits on the suspension, I had to do body repairs, we had to do paintwork repairs, we had to change seats, we had to do fuel leaks, oil leaks, you name it, it needed it. And I got filthy dirty. You see, buses, they're not like cars. They get a lot of road dirt, they get a lot of oil, they get a lot of mess, and you end up getting filthy dirty. And because we were trying to do everything as cheap as we could do it, it just meant we had to get in there and get our hands dirty, and we had to get mucky. I was trying to fix this bus without a ramp. So the bus was in the corner of the yard, and we were doing most of the work over in the corner of the yard because we didn't want to take up ramp space. I only got on the ramp for maybe 1 or 2 days to do the underside of it, but I was struggling my backside off to make this bus work. The reality is this, I spent all week, and I probably spent 70 to 80 hours of my time on this bus. I remember taking it for its MOT. I had to drive to Bicester test station, which is the other side of Aylesbury. I drove into the yard. The MOT tester met me and he goes, okay, great, just take it onto lane 1. We put it through lane 1, the bus passed. No problems. MOT tester came out and he gave me an MOT certificate and he said, no problem, all good, you're good to go. I'm like, great. I'm so happy at this point. I'm so happy because the first big job I got, completed, and it went through, done, completed it. As I drive back to the yard, I'm like, in my head, I'm like, this is just the start. I'm gonna get so much work here. I'm excited, honest, I can't explain it. This is the first big job I've got. But then I start thinking, okay, I've got to do an invoice now. I've got to actually get paid for this. But we hadn't really discussed how much it's going to cost before I'd done the job. You see, I was so eager just to get the job that I said, yeah, I'll do it, I'll sort it out, and I'll keep it as cheap as I can. But we hadn't really discussed what the expectation levels are, because his expectations of cheap and my expectations of cheap might be on very different levels. And what happened was I got back to the yard, and I remember driving into his yard, and Chris was walking across the muddy yard, and in the corner was his porter cabin where he used to sit and he used to run his business. And I drove in and I sort of saw him and he stopped and he went, "How did you do?" I went, "Mate, there's your paperwork." So I handed him an MOT certificate and all the paperwork and I said, "Yeah, passed, no problem." And he went, "Good job, just park up and then come into the port cabin and we'll have a conversation." So I went over to I parked the bus up and I put my tools away and I started taking all my stuff out the bus, sorry. Parked the bus up, took all my stuff out, put it all back in my van, and I went over to his porter cabin. And I walked in and there was Chris sat at his desk. Now this porter cabin was in the middle of the yard. It was held up by pallets. It wasn't a very good place. It was a bit run down, a bit tired. And I remember going in and Chris was sat in the far corner of his porter cabin, and all these visual things that I'm looking at, so the rundown porter cabin, the tired buses, the yard is there, they're pretty much destitute. In my head, I'm thinking he's a bit of a cheapskate. In my head, I'm judging him, thinking he hasn't got much money. So I go in and Chris literally, he goes, "Oh, great job getting the bus to an MOT." And out of his pocket, he pulled out of his top short pocket a big wad of £50 notes, and he reeled off 3 £50 notes for me, and he gave me them. He goes, that's a tip, that's a thank you from me to you for getting that bus to its MOT first time." And I remember holding that, honestly, I remember grabbing that £150 like I'd never seen money before in my life, and I didn't want to show him that it meant a lot to me, but it did. That £150 was the first sort of real money I'd made in months. And it was seriously a lot of money for me back then. And I remember putting it in my pocket and he said, "Okay, great, if you just go and do an invoice for me, I'll get you paid for that right away." So I went out to my van and I started writing down all the bits and all the bobs and all the invoicing. I started writing down how many hours I'd worked on this vehicle, and it was like 75 hours. My hourly rate was about £30 an hour back then, and I'm thinking 70 times 30, that's £2,000. But then you've got all the parts, and you've got this, and you've got that, and you've got everything else. The bill came in to about £4,500, £5,000. I can't remember the exact figure, but it was certainly £4,500, £5,000. And I'm like, hey, this is a lot. He ain't gonna pay it. There's no way he's gonna pay it. I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna look like an absolute fool. I'm gonna go in there and he's gonna laugh at me and he's gonna literally throw me out of his office. So what I start doing was I'm like, I need to get my foot in the door. So if it means I earn no profit, then I'll do it just to get some cash in, just to pay who I've got to pay, but it gets my foot in the door for the bigger gain. So what I done was I went through the invoice and I started rewriting it. And I deducted everything down to the bare minimum. So the bare minimum amount for my labour, I think I've got it down to like £600. And then this and then that. I got that invoice down to just over £1,500. And I remember thinking, okay, it's still not bad. 1,500 quid, still great, not bad. I'm not making any money at this point, but still, 1,500 quid is still better than nothing. And I remember walking into the office and I was scared to give him the invoice. I was scared because I'd just written it out on a bit of paper. It wasn't a professional invoice. It was just me writing everything out on a duplicate pad in my van. And I went in and I folded it up and I put it on his desk. And I literally, as soon as I gave it to him, I wanted to get out of there. Because I don't know what it is, but when it comes to asking people for money, I never used to like doing that. And I remember Chris grabbed it straight away. He literally grabbed it straight away. And he opened it up and he looked at it. He pulled all the money out of his top pocket and he reeled off the money. And he paid me there and then. And I then questioned him. And I went, "Are you okay with that amount of money?" And he went, "Yeah. I actually thought it was going to be £5,000 or £6,000. He goes, "So you can come again." I'm like, whoa, what the heck? I'm like, hold on, let me get you another invoice. Thing is, the lesson I took away from that is never undersell yourself. You see, I know what value I brought to Chris. I know the value I brought to his business. I got his bus through an MOT first time. That's massive for a bus and coach company. That means that bus can go out and earn him £1,000 a day, so that's massive. The lesson Chris taught me that day was never undervalue yourself. Because the value you bring to the table is worth every single goddamn pound that you charge. If you offer high value, maximum value, and you fix somebody else's problems, charge for it. I have never devalued myself since that day. So I actually thank Chris a lot for that. I thank myself for it as well, because if I'd stuck to my guns and if I just said, yeah, no, you're going to pay $4,000, I would never have got that lesson. The reality is this: I do not undervalue myself. Don't you undervalue yourself? Listen, my name's Alistair Cunningham. I hope you found that useful. If you did, like, follow, share, love, comment, let me know. Make sure you come back tomorrow and we'll have more amazing content for you guys. Listen, if you want to catch up with last week's episode, that's up there. If you want to come along to any of my events, that's down there. Guys, see you next time. Hey guys, I really want to help you. I want to help you grow. I want to help you be inspired. I want to empower you to change your life. Now the thing is, I've been in business since 22 years old and I'm now 40. Actually, 40 this week. And I'm making more money now than I've ever made. But trust me, over the last 18 years, I've made many mistakes. I've learned loads of lessons. I've won and lost. I've made money, lost money, made friends, lost friends, done big business, done small business. And let me tell you something. Business is experience. Experience gives you lessons. Them lessons I've put into a training program called the Business Launchpad. The Business Launchpad is aimed at you. It's aimed at those people that are looking to take their small business and create it into a six-figure business. So it doesn't matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter if you're a bricks and mortar business. It doesn't matter if you're a property entrepreneur. It doesn't matter if you own a shop, if you're an electrical engineer, if you're a plumber, a mechanic, a garage owner. It doesn't matter. I have got the experience to help you take that business from where you're at to six figures. I know I can do that. I've done it many times and I've helped hundreds, if not thousands of people do that too. The Business Launchpad happens on a monthly basis and you're invited to come along for just £1. This event will change your life and it will change how you see things. You see, there's 5 elements of business. Number 1, you've got sales. Number 2, you've got marketing. Number 3, you've got the business behind the business. Number 4, you need to learn how to present to people. And number 5 is you. You see, no matter how strong your sales are, no matter how strong your marketing is, no matter how strong the business behind the business is, if you don't believe you can receive it, you never will. These 5 elements will explode your business and explode your income, and I'm inviting you to come and spend a day with me and learn how I can help you grow that business. Guys, my name's Alistair Cunningham. There's going to be a link just up there to get registered for this event. Get registered. We're coming to a town near you or virtually. Get registered, just £1. See you there.